Hello, my name is Alex Barnes. I currently attend Madonna University, and this is a book report for Organizational Behavior Management 3020. I'm going to be covering The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko, Willnik, and Leif, Babin. This is actually their second book. Their first book I'll talk about very briefly is The Extreme Ownership. So I'll be talking about how this book relates to organizational behavior as well as key points in the book and some things that hopefully will affect my leadership style in the future. First of all, talking briefly about extreme ownership, very briefly. Basically just going to cover the ideas, their basic ideas of leadership, which is cover and move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command, as well as one final, which isn't a law, but how they view their leadership style, which is extreme ownership. Cover and move is simply that of teamwork and mutual support. So the idea of one team member supporting another team member, the success of the team is the success of the individual. Simple is just that, is having a generalized, very simple mission statement. Not complicated. Complexity creates chaos. So the more complex the plan is, the easier when things go wrong, because things always go wrong, the harder it is for that plan to succeed. Prioritize and execute, which is being able to detach yourself from a certain situation in a multitude of issues, and being able to prioritize which issue is the most concerning, which one needs the attention now, or attention first, or what plan needs to be first, what report needs to be turned in first, whatever it may be. And being able to identify, communicate that to your team and to your subordinates, peers, bosses, whatever, and then being able to then execute and take care of that report, whatever it may be. And then finally is decentralized command, which is leadership on every level. And then having that leadership, having empowered to be able to make decisions, choices, and whatever they may need to actually be that leadership, if you will. Finally, I'll go over extreme ownership very briefly, which is the idea of owning the entirety of your world. So your business world, your leadership world. So assuming that all responsibility rests with the leader. Not that the leader has to do everything, but that all the responsibility lies in with the leader. So if one team member doesn't complete a task, it's because the leader didn't lead that team member to complete the task, so on and so forth. How this applies to organizational behavior obviously is the leadership aspect of it. As in our books, we have an entire chapter dedicated to leadership, power, and all that stuff. So this obviously focuses very heavily on the leadership, but also with the interactions of subordinates, peers, bosses, whatever it may be, how to de-conflict situations and how to resolve some conflict, and how that sometimes the conflict is good to be able to grow. So one of the ending chapters, actually, as a quick little anecdote, is humble but not passive. Being able to understand what tasks need to be done, always doing your tasks, always being humble, and always doing what you're supposed to do, but also not being passive in the sense that, in the situation of something arises where that task is not possibly done. You can't do that due to high risk, high reward, or high risk, low reward, or whatever it may be, and being able to stand up and say, hey, we can't do that type of situations as well. So it's very forgot my word there. But anyway, moving forward. Some key points of the book. The biggest thing, obviously, with it being called the dichotomy of leadership, is the contrast in leadership. So is balance. So being able to balance one type of leadership over another type of leadership, being able to split the middle, if you will, when you need to, about being that micromanager versus a laissez-faire type of manager, being able to not being able to prioritize tasks and make sure those tasks get accomplished, but not so overbearing that your employees aren't able to breathe, aren't able to make choices and decisions on their own. One of the things that they talk about, which I found fascinating, was leadership capital. The idea that every leader had a finite amount of authority, amount of power. You can expend it foolishly over stupid ideals as, a cell phone in a meeting, or a hat in the office, or whatever it may be. But when they should be prioritizing areas where what cannot be compromised, such as like reports, budgeting, due dates, things like that. So when you start using all of your authority and yelling at people and doing whatever about finite, small items, you start to lose that power, that authority. And it actually undermines your own authority in front of your employees. Yeah. Also, some of the ideas of not using accountability as a micromanaging type of style. So not being overbearing, not checking every report every day to make sure that the numbers are right. One, that it's kind of a waste of your individual time when you could be managing multiple tasks. You're focused on one task at a time. Also, it's very draining on the employees, but you can use it as a means of enforcement. Obviously, they quoted another book in here saying employees don't do what bosses don't check. So the idea that you need to check some things, but not micromanage to the point of overbearing, is another. You also need to educate on the why that report is important, why that idea or that paperwork needed to be turned in on time, why this program needs to be filled out correctly as opposed to another. All these situations. Each chapter in this book has 3 different segments to it. So I have a quick war story example, if you will, an example of where either they failed a task because they didn't do something, or they succeeded in a task because they did, the general principle of that idea, and then how it applies to businesses with another example from their leadership company, Echelon Front. Some of the most important explanations you can do as a leader is according to them, is the why. Why is this important? What are the consequences that could happen if that is not accomplished? And it can't just be because I said so, because that's not real authority. That's not real reasons why people don't respond to, because I told you to do this. This is why you have to do this. You have to explain, this task is important because of A, B, C, and if C doesn't get done, then D, E, F is Y. There are the consequences. So there's a lot of things in this book about how to best balance the choices, or the leadership styles. Some of the things that I took away from this book, excuse me, was I was able to relate a lot of the terminology, a lot of the ideas, especially the military aspect due to my background, in the way that they incorporated leadership into their businesses had me thinking of some of the camps, the schools of thoughts that I've gone to, the leadership schools, and how to identify and flip the switch, how to manage leadership and decision-making differently. It had me remembering some decisions that I had made in my military career and how I could have improved them by being that better leadership, instead of saying, oh, because I'm the higher rank, this is why you have to do that. So I'm going to try to use that to better be a coach for the high school sports that I coach, and as well as hopefully in the future as a manager or some sort of leadership position, being that good leader and having, as well as that good follower. Again, one of the other chapters in this book is a leader is also a follower. You don't always know every situation that's coming up, and sometimes there are employees that may know more about a certain situation or a certain product than you do. So it's best to sometimes default on other people's knowledges. Excuse me, sorry, I had to fix my camera there. But again, that was a quick summary of Dichotomy of Leadership. I would strongly suggest this book. It was excellent read, as you can tell by all my little sticky notes in here. Excellent read. I also want to go out and try to get their Extreme Ownership book. But again, it explains the contrast of leadership styles and is very, very insightful. I'm actually going to have to read this again and start taking better notes because you can never take too good of notes. But it's a fantastic book. I would highly recommend it. Thank you very much. This has been my presentation on Dichotomy of Leadership. Again, there's a good picture of it for you guys. Yeah, thank you.